Having the right electronics on your boat for navigation can mean the difference between a day of freedom sailing with friends among islands and an expensive day attempting to sail over islands. Or worse. Way worse. But after only 10 seconds in the electronics aisle at the marine supply store, all of our choices turn our brains to mush, and our decision making turns to a guessing game. Smartphones are an option too, or are they? Don't they lose reception and die when you need them the most? Our go-to guy for electronics is Kim Baker, who's created the electronics packages for nearly every new boat built by Brooklyn Boatyard for the last 10 years. In this video series, Kim's going to bring us up to speed on the best handheld electronics for small boats, a mid-range system for day sailors and cruisers, and an out-of-this-world system for a custom 90-footer. Kim, thanks for joining us to talk about some marine electronics. What's some basic small boat marine electronics that you might want to be aware of and have in your ditty bag?
The single most important thing to have on a boat is a compass. And then the next most important thing that you'd want to have is a chart, kind of like having a map, so you know where you are and where you're going. As neato as all this marine electronic stuff is, this is infinitely more important to have a paper chart handy and nearby.
Nothing beats a paper chart and a magnetic compass.
Nothing. It's the only way to go. However, if you want to get a little more involved, or if you wanted to have a little bit more of a safety factor, you could get yourself a handheld Chartplotter like this guy right here.
Kim, something like this, handheld GPS, there's a built-in antenna?
That's correct. It's right about here. It's a patch antenna. These are much more sensitive antennas than what you'd find 15 years ago. The GPS satellite constellation has been doubled with satellites from other countries as well. So in addition to tapping into our satellites, these will look at other satellites. So this is a 52-channel receiver. It can look at 52 satellites simultaneously. So these are much more accurate than what we used to have before. Even though the form factor is about the same, the internal componentry of the GPS antenna is much more accurate, much more precise. This thing can act as a total chart plotter. You can set up a go-to waypoint and then push a page that will show you your intended distance and bearing to waypoint that you can follow. It will give you speed over ground that's average from the GPS, and you can set up routes as well. It will show you tidal information, sunrise, sunset. It has a calculator, it has an alarm in it. Just about everything you could want to pack into a tiny little package like this is in there.
Kind of a pocket multi-function display. It's got an alarm clock.
It has it all. This is a really full-featured, small but portable and light chart plotter. It floats. If you were to take it and throw it overboard, it will float. And if you can get your boat back over to it, it will still be working and tell you where you are. So this is made for the marine environment. You would put your batteries in here. The batteries last at least 12 hours. If you go into a standby mode, maybe even longer than that. You can interface this into other equipment here, on USB, like your computer especially. And then this port right here, you could plug this in right here like that, and then plug this into a 12-volt outlet. And then it automatically switches over and runs off of your ship's batteries rather than the batteries that are internal. So this can run pretty much indefinitely without having to change batteries. I would say that this is not only a requirement for a small boat, let's say you get up to 18 feet or so. You really should have one of these on board, maybe. But this is also considered to be the most important backup that you could have on any vessel, all the way up to 91 feet. We're involved in the construction of a 91-footer, and it has one of these on board. No matter what size boat you have, whether it's small or it's big, you should have one of these on board, because if you lose electricity, this will still work. The one that I have in my hand is a Garmin GPS Map 78SC, and this is a nice model to have. They make less expensive models that don't have the chart plotting feature on them. They only give you latitude and longitude and in monochrome. So this is sort of an upscale version of a handheld. You can get them for less. but it has the cartography, it shows you where you are, and it is using a constellation of satellites that are surrounding it like a giant dome that are coming from all different directions. And you're always going to get a good precision level. And I do want to bring up the fact that smartphones and iPads do make a great backup to this unit here. I would never recommend using a phone for your primary, for the simple reason that it's just not marine grade. And then secondarily, the accuracy is dependent upon land-based cellular towers. Along the coast of Maine, they're very sparse. So we're looking here at a aerial view of the coast of Maine, which is including the St. George River on one end and Frenchman Bay on the other end. The main part of the population for this coast rides along Route 1. So this is the main thrust of the Route 1 corridor. This is your primary navigational device, your handheld GPS chart plotter. But we do recommend that you carry a smartphone that has a navigation app on it. I use Navionics, which is simple and correlates very easily to the MFDs that we work with because they run Navionics charts as well. But there are limitations in using a smartphone for navigational purposes. This is for backup. The cellular towers are situated in such a way that they favor where the population centers are. So you'll find one here on Dodge Mountain in Rockland. You'll find one here at Ragged Mountain in Camden. You'll find one here at Lincolnville on Doherty Mountain. There's one here in Belfast. There's a tall hill here in Orland. So there's another cellular tower here. And there's one in Ellsworth. So this is representing the limit of the range of 4G high-speed data that's being provided by a cellular provider the way I understand it. But something to bear in mind is that Maine, this coast of Maine at least, has a lot of geography, topography, a lot of hills, a lot of valleys, a lot of ridges. And all those ridges are blocking the signal in spots. Let's say that you left port here at Center Harbor on a beautiful morning and you're using your Navionics app on your phone. And then you came down the reach and you turned the corner and decided to have lunch in Stonington, for example. As soon as you turn around this mark, whatever it might be, poof, you lost service, you've lost your location, you have no idea where you are. The fog rolls in real thick from the south. Not a good move.
So Kim, this has really enlightened me that, these are my cruising grounds, and relying on even a great Navionics app on my cell phone doesn't get reception, I don't get a fix.
That's correct. If you load an app and then you hit the location button, your battery strength is going to plummet from 100% down to 25 or 75% very quickly because it's using a lot more processing speed in the background. Whereas this is designed to do it all day long. That's a big difference. Now you can get around that in one way by taking a Bluetooth GPS antenna, right? And you connect it wirelessly to your phone or your iPad. And assuming that you have your phone or your iPad in a protected place on the boat, you would connect this Bluetooth GPS antenna to it wirelessly. It would no longer have to be doing that location process, which is draining the battery dramatically. And instead, you'd be using some of the battery strength from the Bluetooth GPS antenna, which draws very little. So that's a good way to get around that.
But there's nothing that's going to increase the durability, the harsh marine environment. Being able to take the thing out, not only just throwing it overboard, if it's raining out.
Exactly correct, Eric. And there's one thing that we should mention in that, aside from being able to handle a lot of G's and loads and everything else and do all the chart plotting that a handheld chart plotter can do, a handheld chart plotter can't make an emergency phone call for you. So if I had a choice between setting up my phone with an external GPS antenna and not draining the battery too quickly, but knowing that the battery's going, and I'm out boating all day long and I see that it's down to 40%, okay, well what happens if there's an emergency? Assuming I can get through on my cell phone to a cell tower, I would want to reserve that power in the phone for emergency purposes, which is why I wouldn't use it for navigation.
We talked through, your compass, your chart, your kind of handheld GPS. Take us out with kind of a modern day handheld VHF. I was completely blown away when you brought this up at how handheld VHF radios are changing.